you treating yourself to a new 𝗲𝗲'𝘀 game on the EA app or the 𝗲𝗲'𝗀.com? Hey, did you know that using my code, I earn a small percentage of your purchase, which greatly helps support my content? And with that, I want to say thank you so much. Now let's go to Redwood. Previously on Redwood, Janelle invited Paris out to enjoy music from her friend Bones and his band 𝗲𝗲𝗿𝗲. Later that night, Janelle and Paris enjoyed dinner at a gas station diner, where Paris considered it a date. Janelle disagreed. Tucker finds navigating life off the res and now living in 𝗓𝗓𝗏 quite lonely as his ex moves on and he begins his new job at a dangerous construction site. He recently signed up for Tinder, only to swipe right with a co-worker's profile. We'll see how that goes. Janelle had a normal day at Redwood, working oh so hard to make her family business thrive. Later in her shift, Bones flirted with her. She turned him down immediately, but he wasn't fazed. Like, dude, you're literally dating her best friend. Stop. Dean recently hit a midlife crisis after putting way too many hours into helping 𝗲𝗲𝗿𝗲 at the veterinarian clinic, but he likes her too much to admit it. He finds himself yearning to get into more rustic activities, using his hands a little more. Paris built up the courage to ask Janelle on a real date, where he mentioned to her that he would like for her to apply to Brichester Oasis, the college he's planning on attending. Janelle told him she'd think about it, and she's just trying to live in the now. The date continued with Paris testing her knowledge in logic and romance. Previously on Redwood, Dean takes Janelle over to Liz's house for some quality girl time, doing hair and makeup and just laughing and listening to music. But most of all, educating Bones on proper skincare and what shade he should be looking for to, fix the dark eyes. Barb mentions to Dean about her new car giving her issues and how she thinks she was scammed by a man named 𝗲𝗲𝗏, a sleazy car salesman. Dean takes a look at the car and confirms the car is no longer good for use, as 𝗲𝗏 uses all of his charm on Barb. He agrees to replace her car for free if she goes out with him. Look at that face, wouldn't you? Janelle ponders the thought of intimacy with Paris and how she's ready to take on this new life experience. Tucker is having a hard time keeping his co-worker/Tinder girl's attention, as she's finding him quite boring. He invites her out to the fall fest after she realizes he's actually a really nice guy. Like, don't do him like that. Everyone gathers for the annual fall fest in 𝗓𝗓𝗏. Tucker meets up with Cornette and she already finds him quite interesting. Janelle and Paris get into some fall activities as they share interest about time and space and just the universe. 𝗲𝗏𝗏 kisses Barb as she's not expecting it, and surprisingly, she liked it. Then we have Bones and Liz just being like a really cute couple and just enjoying the festival. Bones is excited to eat. Dean finds himself drunk at the festival as he recalls memories of his late wife, Jocasta. 𝗲𝗲𝗿𝗏 comes to Dean's aid as he tells her 𝗲𝗲𝗿𝗏 memories of Jocasta and how 𝗲𝗲𝗿 even looks like her. We conclude the festival with Paris wanting pictures for an exhibit he's a part of. Janelle, of course, being his model, made Paris realize something. I wonder what it could be. Previously on Redwood, Dean surprised Janelle with a birthday party on the res, and judging by her reaction, she was not expecting that. Before heading to Dean's parents' house, they spent a day working at Redwood, where Dean did some restocking and Janelle pretended to work. Later that day, Aiden Hill, an old elementary school classmate, gave Janelle an early birthday present. She accepted it because, they were friends a while back ago, and look how cute he is. Paris later showed up to Redwood after Janelle invited him on the trip, as she didn't want to seem so alone around family she wasn't that close to, even though everything felt so homey already. As Janelle already guessed it, she would be sent out to run errands around the reservation for her grandmother. Paris was more than happy to be of help, as he was just excited to spend time with Janelle, and she was very grateful he was there. Downtown on the res, Janelle and Paris stopped at a farmer's market. Paris couldn't help but notice the peaceful countryside vibes, so he took out his camera and just started taking pictures of everything he thought was just beautiful. Later that night, Janelle celebrated her 21st birthday with her family. Everyone danced and laughed, and even Pa broke it down for us. But soon after, Janelle felt mentally tired. Maybe she was just want to be alone. Paris, noticing Janelle missing, he quickly comforted her and made sure things were okay. She expressed to him that she just needed to get away and go somewhere a little quieter, as there was no privacy in the house. Janelle discreetly bought some shrooms from Uncle Yato for, confidence. They went to pet the horse, and they were off to make out truck. But Paris didn't know where they were going. He was just along for the ride. Finally convincing Paris, they took the mushrooms together, only for Janelle to get sick. She fought hard against the nausea just to show Paris a little bit of love, only to lose that battle 10 minutes later. As Paris started tripping on his mushroom, he didn't seem to notice the throw-up taste they both shared, as they finally made out under the beautiful moonlight. The making out never seemed to stop, as Janelle and Paris boldly took things a step further, and they both lost their virginity to one another, making this a night to remember. Happy birthday, Janelle! Previously on Redwood. Still vibing on the res, Paris decides to take some photos for his upcoming art exhibit, but quickly being dragged into doing some family chores. Dean persuades Paris into riding a horse for the very first time, which he was pretty excited about. His ego quickly boosted as he enjoyed the feeling of being on top, even if it was only for a quick second. Later back at the house, Janelle sat Paris down to tell him she was ready to be his girlfriend. Paris was very excited by this news, as he's been ready to make things official for a while now. Dean and Pa had a very serious conversation about the state of Redwood and how there's been complaints about Redwood's lack of inventory. Dean reassured Pa that everything was completely fine and refused to talk about the matter any further. Now at Paris's home, we finally see that the dynamic between his mother and father is not as healthy as it should be, and that his father finds the marriage quite boring. It doesn't look like Cedric is the only one bored in this marriage, as we learn that Tish still hangs on to a high school crush, Richard. She doesn't like that he's bald. Back in Strangerville, Paris meets up with Janelle to hang out at the library with their study group from high school to prepare for college. Paris found himself still in disbelief that Janelle was even his girlfriend, and he wasn't the only one. Mariah boldly confessed her attraction to Paris, as he canceled that right then and there. Janelle noticed Mariah's advances and was quick to put her back in her place, as Mariah never liked Janelle ever since high school. Paris urged the girls to take it outside, only to get upset with Janelle for causing a scene. Janelle not agreeing with how Paris handled the situation, she decided to leave the group a little early, as she was already getting irritated. Paris pulled Mariah to the side to have a conversation about his newfound relationship, only for Mariah to ignore everything he said to her and invite herself over for dinner. Tish was more than happy to accommodate Mariah, as Paris only just grew irritated by her presence. Roped into driving Mariah home, they both argued in a car about a potential relationship Mariah was hoping for. Paris did not agree to that, as he only thought they were just talking. Mariah wasn't the only one hoping for a potential relationship, as Tish, his mom, shared her hopes as well. Paris shook things off, as he only has eyes for Janelle. Paris prepared last-minute photos for the upcoming art exhibit. He couldn't wait for his family and friends to see all the beauty and love that he saw. There was one last thing to do before the show, and 𝗲𝗃 wasn't answering her phone. So Paris popped up at her house, which left her completely shook, and he talked to her. He apologized for the situation and explained to her about the boundaries he set with Mariah. 𝗲𝗃 eventually forgave him, and everything mended itself. Look at them. Previously on Redwood. At the exhibit, Paris revealed to 𝗲𝗃 she was his inspiration for his photos. 𝗲𝗃 expressed her gratitude towards Paris, but couldn't help to think what other people would say about the photos. Nate calls over his dealer girlfriend to meet him at the art exhibit, only to purchase Xanax from her. Paris notices Mariah's unwanted presence as he questions who even invited her. Later, Paris reveals his photos early to his parents, just to get the reaction he was not hoping for. Before Paris could get any more feedback from his parents, everyone quickly rushed in to look at the photos, just to be confused, because why is 𝗲𝗃 Paris's muse? Yeah, you see what I did there? After everyone leaves, Paris finds himself alone with Nate, who is clearly high on something. Nate, too high to see straight, begins to comment on the photos in front of him, not even aware they are Paris's photos. He told Paris the photos were depressing and the photographer should do better. Back at the Dakota residence, Nate's parents argue about Nate's sobriety. He expresses to them that he's clean and he's hurt by the accusations. The next morning, Nate visits his PO in downtown Del Sol Valley, where he's obligated to give a urine test to ensure he stays clean. His PO, Mr. 𝗲𝗲, explains to Nate about how they are placing him somewhere new for his community service. Nate did not like this at all. Nate, not having any say in the matter, begins work at the construction site, only to abuse 5-minute breaks, and of course, get high. Nate finally gets caught slacking off, and then gets put in the trusty care of Tucker. Tucker finds himself really irritated by this because he already hates his job, and training was the last thing he wanted to do. After Nate's shift, he notices Lily, a coworker at the construction site. He was very quick to express his feelings towards Lily, and if she was interested in a hookup. She agreed, and Nate capped the night very well. Previously on Redwood. 𝗲𝗃 visits Jamal and Bones' new place in the city to discuss the events that happened at the gallery. Bones and Jamal, too high to realize what was going on, Liz was quick to lend an open ear to 𝗲𝗃's thoughts. She talked her into giving Paris a call, which only resulted in Paris showing up in the city looking for 𝗲𝗃. 𝗲𝗃 expressed the need for space as Paris desperately tried to explain to her the importance of communication in a relationship. To smooth things over, he wanted 𝗲𝗃 to meet his mother. He was very sure this will put things to rest, only for Tish to disrespect 𝗲𝗃 at the dinner table. She expressed how 𝗲𝗃 was only using Paris and that she thought 𝗲𝗃 was too dusty to date her son. 𝗲𝗃, realizing Tish will never see her as Paris's girlfriend, she decides to leave. Paris running after 𝗲𝗃, he apologizes for his mother's attitude and asks 𝗲𝗃 to come back, only for 𝗲𝗃 to decline and break things off with Paris. Maybe they were better as friends. Previously on Redwood. 𝗲𝗃 visits Liz's house to free her mind from the breakup with Paris. only to notice that Liz is dealing with something as well. We find out Liz is missing Bones at the house and she feels lonely without him. The girls decide to distract themselves from the misery of the male species with slumber party activities and, of course, Twilight. But it doesn't do much to help Liz. Bones is still on her mind. What could he be doing? Who is he with? Why is he not calling her back? The next day, Janelle talks to Bones about him ghosting Liz, but he doesn't seem fazed at all. Aiden stops by Redwood to invite Bones and Janelle to his bonfire. Janelle quickly agrees, and her and Bones finish up their work shift. At the end of the work shift, Bone expresses his concerns about Aiden and Janelle hanging out, but Janelle ignores him like she always does. Later at the bonfire, Aiden quickly gets Janelle comfortable and in the party spirit, in more ways than one. As Janelle flirts with Aiden, Liz and Bones begin to bicker. It was going to happen sooner or later, honestly. Later in the night, Aiden tells Janelle his feelings for her, and he boldly kisses her. She did not resist that kiss. I mean, I wouldn't either. A confession of feelings and a smooch later, Janelle agrees to chill with Aiden at his house. There was something cozy about being with Aiden and just vibing with him that made Janelle feel so freaking comfortable. A shared blunt and wet clothes being removed turns into a hot makeout scene between Aiden and Janelle, which turns into them having woohoo for the very first time. Impulsively, of course, with no condom. Yeah, sorry, Janelle. But, I mean, overall, she had a really good time, and we definitely do it again. Previously on Redwood, Dean contemplates the thought of taking out a loan to help ensure Janelle gets a chance to attend college. Though his credit score wasn't in any shape for him to take out a loan, Dean gets approved for a $50,000 loan that he's still deciding if he wants to take or not. Jacob, who's actually a loan shark, explains to Dean that even though that's not the amount that he asked for, it's the amount that he was offering, and that Dean had 1 to 2 weeks to make his final decision, or there was not going to be a loan. Tucker shoots a shot with Cornette again, just for her to reject him. She mentioned to Tucker that she didn't want that type of relationship at work. Tucker, now frustrated with himself, he asks Nate for advice. Nate explains to Tucker that if he wants help from him, he needs something in exchange. The boys both agree, eventually, that Tucker will start clocking Nate's hours once or twice a week. Eager to get the job done, Nate invites Tucker to a party a friend of his is throwing and suggests Tucker find someone new there. But first, Tucker had to stop by and see baby Caden. Nate gets acquainted with Katie and Brayden, and things seem to be going very well. Brayden suggests that they play video games, as Tucker promised he would every time he visits. The fun doesn't seem to last long as Aaron walks into the room and nothing but a towel. Nate, completely shook and quite uncomfortable, confronts Aaron about manners and consent. Aaron, feeling disrespected in his own home, he tells Tucker to keep Nate in line, which only fueled Nate even more. The arguing continued until Aaron punched Nate in the face. The men fought and Nate laid Aaron right to rest. Tucker then confronted Nate about the incident and explained to him that he had a system in place. Nate then left Tucker at Katie's place, only to arrive home and get broken up with by Kenya. She explains that Nate has been a ghost of a partner and that she wasn't going to supply him drugs anymore. He was not happy. He then kicks Kenya out and passes out. Oh my god. Dean helps Apani at the vet clinic once again, and he dreads every bit of it. He wants to explain to Apani how helping her at the clinic is causing him to have a midlife crisis, all because he just wants to spend time with her. Liz prepares for a house party she's throwing due to loneliness she's feeling in the relationship with Bones. She noticed a decline in messages and phone calls from him, and she hoped that he would show up to the party so we can talk to him about it. The house party begins, and Paris is the first to show up. More people start to arrive, and to our surprise, so does Bones. Liz begins to question Bones about his lack of effort in the relationship, but that only seems to just make him mad. He was done talking about this. Back to the party, Kennedy notices Janelle and Paris not speaking. Tipsy in awe, she goes over to Paris and kisses him right in front of everyone. Paris, surprised by this kiss, he accepts it. It doesn't stop there either, as Paris got extremely pink in his moolah section, and he eventually kissed her again. Janelle sees the entire thing happen from across the room and hightails her way towards Paris until we notice Aiden shows up to the party. Previously on Redwood. Still at Liz's party, Aiden distracts Janelle from whatever could be troubling her. It was Paris. Paris was troubling her. Dean wakes up and dreads another day at the vet clinic. He's hoping he could talk to 𝗲𝗲 about all the stress he's been feeling over dinner at her place. But later that night, not much talking happened, as Dean found himself overjoyed with emotion. They capped the night very, very well. Look at them, oh my god. While Dean stayed at 𝗲𝗲's, Janelle invited Aiden over to watch a movie and hang out with her. She just wanted to get to know him a little bit. But of course, sooner or later, the obvious happened. And we for sure did not turn that man down. I mean, come on. The next morning, Paris texts Janelle wanting to talk. She agreed, but of course, before we even could meet him, Aiden called asking to hang out again. Sorry, Paris. Maybe next time. Janelle mentioned to Aiden that she couldn't hang out long, as she was already meeting up with Liz and Kennedy. He agreed to tag along, and off we went to Bones and Jamel's. Immediately after arriving at Jamel and Bones' place, Janelle began flirting with Jamel, which quickly took the attention of Kennedy. Liz, excited to be hanging out with Bones again after their fight at the party, things take a quick turn as Bones mentions to Liz that they might need to take a break in the relationship. Bones explains that it's just been on his mind since he moved to the city, which completely ruins Liz's entire day. The gang visits the skate park so Liz and Bones can take a breather. Kennedy then begins to annoy Janelle with talk of Paris. The girls argue for a bit until the frustration Liz held about Bones bursted out and she broke up with him right on the spot. After the argument, Bones went to go skate his troubles away as Jamel stayed over and started flirting with Janelle again. Not even 5 minutes later, Kennedy began to flirt with Jamel, which only pissed Janelle off because, aren't you talking to Paris? We all saw the kiss. Aiden, confused as to what's happening, he eggs Janelle on to standing her ground in the argument between the girls. Kennedy explains to Janelle how minding your business is free, which only made Janelle want to hit her. Aiden dared her. He told her how she should punch Kennedy for disrespecting her like that, which is exactly what happened. As Aiden encourages Janelle from the sidelines, we watch Janelle brutally kick and punch Kennedy to the ground. Aiden was very, very proud of Janelle. Jamel explains to Janelle how he didn't mind being used like a dirty tissue, and that him and Kennedy were going to be leaving together. Back at Janelle's house, Aiden begins to wonder what's the big deal about Paris. Janelle explains that he was her ex, but they're still good friends, and how Kennedy was wrong for that. Aiden, now understanding, he congratulates Janelle on a winning fight with a kiss and a hug. Janelle kisses him back proudly. Previously on Redwood. Cedric and Tish figure out ways to make their marriage exciting. But unfortunately, Cedric already feels that the thrill is just lost. Paris reaches out to Kennedy multiple times in hopes that they could talk about the party kiss, but he experiences Kennedy ghosting him. Paris invites Mariah to reread his college essay before he sends it off, only for Mariah to express her feelings towards Paris. He shrugs her off and explains how he's talking to someone at the moment and that he wasn't interested. Mariah continued to flirt with Paris, causing him to be turned on by her actions. He decided they should watch a movie together, but Mariah denied him, begging to stay upstairs with him in his bed. But ultimately, she lost that battle and they both had to settle for the movie. As the movie progresses, Paris soon finds out him and Mariah have nothing in common, and he decides to just send her home. Annoyed by the lack of connection he felt, he asked Janelle if she wanted to stop by. She agreed, and they talked about their friendship and the future of college. He begs her to apply to Oasis, but he fails to change her mind. Back at home, Janelle applies for Oasis behind Paris's back, and then meets up with him to apply for Foxbury at Liz's place. They both agreed to apply together, even if they were going to different schools. Paris then asked the girls to come with him to Forgotten Hollow to see if Kennedy was okay. As soon as they get there, Janelle bumps right into Kennedy and Jamel shopping. She was told to mind her business, and then they left. Janelle tries to talk Paris out of going to Kennedy's place as she isn't worth the trouble. Paris disagrees with Janelle and assumes she was just jealous. Paris then cuts the conversation short and proceeds towards Kennedy's house. Arriving at Kennedy's place, Paris walks into Kennedy and Jamel messing around in the closet. Paris assessing the situation, all he can do is laugh at himself and leave. Back at the store, Janelle was surprised to see Paris back so soon. She asked how everything went, and Paris simply replied, "They talked." Previously on Redwood. Janelle works a shift at Redwood that consisted of yelling at Bones and a visit by Mariah. Janelle, irritated by Mariah's presence, she questions her reasons for being in Chestnut Ridge. Mariah explains she was looking for Reese cups, but she would soon find out Redwood only carried knuckle sandwiches. Janelle calls Paris in hopes that he can defuse the situation, until Mariah was spotted flirting with Dean. Janelle scrambles towards Mariah in an attempt to show her the other things Redwood offered. Dean takes notice and blocks Janelle from showing Mariah the floor. Surprisingly, Aiden shows up to Redwood at the perfect time. Janelle decides to leave work early as she's just frustrated with Dean. Aiden suggests if it makes Janelle feel better, that she should go after Mariah. Janelle takes Aiden's advice and they decide to pull up on Mariah in the creek. They stop at Willow Creek Park, where Mariah so happens to be, and Janelle confronts her. Janelle pushes Mariah to the ground, explaining to Mariah about the boundaries she crossed. Mariah manages to throw in some hands as she stated she was fighting for Paris. Aiden, confused by what was even happening, he eventually had to succumb to the effects of the joint that he smoked earlier. Back at the house, Dean kicks Aiden out and tries to have a conversation with Janelle. Janelle tries to explain her disappointment with her dad, but nothing seems to get resolved. The next day, Paris decides to visit Janelle to talk about the fight. He explains to Janelle that Mariah could press charges, but Janelle wasn't fazed. Paris, over the drama, he decides to stay and de-stress with Janelle. Janelle taking the opportunity, she begins to talk up Kennedy, but Paris avoids the question, only to start playing video games. At the end of their fun-filled day, Paris mentions to Janelle about a college tour at Oasis, and how she should go with him. Eventually, she agrees. Back at the Williams residence, Cedric and Tish's relationship seems to be getting worse. Tish explains her frustration about her life and how Paris leaving soon for college is making her go crazy. That night, Paris checks his application to Oasis, just to find out he was actually accepted. Excited to attend the college tour, Paris wakes up early and heads right over to pick up 𝗛𝗟. Next stop, 𝗲𝗏𝗃 Oasis. Previously on Redwood. 𝗛𝗟 and Paris arrive at 𝗲𝗏𝗃 Oasis for the college tour, with 𝗛𝗟 not really eager to see what the college had to offer. Paris was super excited to take on this new journey. He started by showing her the popular food hangouts, which didn't seem to surprise her. He then took her to the local shopping areas, which only just made her bored. But, I mean, some of the clothes were cute. Seeing how he was failing to keep 𝗛𝗟's attention and stay on her good side, he couldn't wait to show her the campus nightclub. With 𝗛𝗟 being 𝗛𝗟, things of course take a turn. Paris gets annoyed with her for smoking in the club, causing 𝗛𝗟 to isolate herself from Paris. Paris continues to enjoy himself at the nightclub while 𝗛𝗟 steps outside for a breather. She checks her email just to pass time, only to realize she got accepted into 𝗲𝗏𝗃 Oasis through the scholarship program. Back inside the nightclub, Paris builds confidence to buy a drink for a girl he sees at the bar. Drunk already, he works his charm on her and snags her phone number. The next morning, 𝗛𝗟 and Paris attend the college tour. Everything was so pristine and eco-friendly. It was kind of amazing. But everything was just so different than how it was in Strangerville. With Paris barely saying a word to 𝗛𝗟, she manages to make a friend on tour who shared the same opinions she did. Weston, a tour guide and student of 𝗲𝗏𝗃 Oasis, overhears her conversation and chimes in to share his opinions. But I mean, who cares? Paris finally confronts 𝗛𝗟 about the attitude she has held the entire trip and how she was ruining the experience for him. 𝗛𝗟 expresses to Paris how the tour was just a lot for her at the moment and that she was actually ready to go home. Paris tells 𝗛𝗟 that he's not ready to leave, causing 𝗛𝗟 to call Aiden to pick her up. Thanks, Aiden. Previously on Redwood. 𝗛𝗟 stays at Aiden's place after the incident with Paris. She needed to be in a more stress-free environment, and that was with Aiden. Tucker takes Caden to the park and bumps into Liz. They catch up and they talk about Liz and Bones' breakup, which gives Tucker the confidence to make a move on her after seeing her with Caden. That man literally wasted no time. Dean visits his parents' house to borrow money after the electricity cut off at the house. Pa, being very disappointed, he caves in and gives Dean the money that was mainly for the chapter house. Look at his face. Nate takes his friendship with Tucker serious and cuts off his workplace fling. He explains to Tucker that he's 100% into the plan of getting Tucker a date and he'll do what it takes. Tucker eventually saying yes, he explains to Nate how he ran into Liz at the park. He told Nate about the chemistry he felt and how he would like to ask her out now that she was single from Bones. Nate, eager to get the plan done, he invites Tucker to his place for a little makeover. Tucker, seeing this new version of himself, he quickly became insecure about the entire plan. They talk over what Tucker would say to Liz or even how he would kiss her. Running late to pick up Caden, Tucker scrambles to get to Barb's on time, running right into Liz. Liz, being completely shocked by Tucker's appearance, she wasted no time flirting with Tucker. Tucker, being surprised by this whole entire thing, he goes in for his move and he asks her out. She accepts. Previously on Redwood. Weston visits the Dakota residence to ensure Nate's sobriety. Nate, irritated by Weston's presence, he tells him to leave because Weston has been completely fake towards Nate ever since the incident. Constance, Nate's mother, explains that Weston's just here because he really cares about Nate and that he just wants the best for him. Nate, irritated, he leaves, and later that morning, he visits a junkyard where his ex-dealer works. Looking for the dealer, Nate wanders around, finding himself in trouble with the property owners. They assume he's looking to buy drugs, but Nate explains he's looking to buy a vehicle. They begin to question the need for a vehicle at a junkyard, and Nate tells them that he's looking for something discreet. They show him the ambulance on the lot and explain to him that they can only rent it to him for 2 days as they need it for business also. Nate agrees to the deal even though he feels like he's been cheated and he overpaid. Uncomfortable with Nate being there, one of the workers call Aiden in for a hunt. He explains to Aiden how a man like Nate will never be on this side of town looking to rent an ambulance. Things felt a little off. Later that day, Nate meets up with Tucker behind a gas station in Strangerville. Completely distraught by seeing Nate in the ambulance, Tucker begins to freak out, questioning the entire plan. Nate assures him that this is going to work and he can definitely help him get through the date. Tucker, agitated by Nate, he agrees to go along with the plan as they were already running late. They arrive at the theater and Nate goes over the game plan with Tucker. Tucker begins to feel anxious, so he decides to just go inside and meet Liz. They begin to talk about work and traveling, which started to raise some concerns for Nate, who was buzzing about on the other end. The day continued and Liz and Tucker really connected. Conversations flowed between them, and unfortunately Nate couldn't keep up, so he passed out from boredom. With the date going so well, Liz boldly kisses Tucker, leaving him completely shook and very, very happy. After the movie, Tucker and Liz decide to visit the bowling alley across the street. They do a little bowling and they visit the arcade to play some video games. With the date coming to an end, Tucker and Liz share a moment together that ends with a beautiful kiss. Aiden shows up to the movie theater on work business. He scopes out the area, finding the ambulance, and finds Nate inside sleeping. Nate lies to Aiden about why he's using the ambulance, as it wasn't any of his business. Aiden, getting frustrated with Nate, he punches him just to find himself on the ground. Back at Aiden's house, Janelle welcomes him back, and they have a talk about them exclusively hooking up, but with no relationship. Janelle eventually agrees, as she really does like Aiden, and it leaves Aiden very, very happy. Later that day, Wesley stops by for a quick second to discuss what happened with Nate. Aiden demands to know everything about this 𝗛𝗲𝗿𝗲. Previously on Redwood, Dean decides to go ahead and take out the $100,000 loan from 𝗂𝗏. 𝗂𝗏, eager to help Dean, he explains to him that he doesn't have to pay him back until after Janelle is done with her freshman year of college. Janelle still enjoying herself at Aiden's house, she realizes it's time to go home. She actually enjoyed her time with Aiden, and she was extremely grateful of his hospitality. She just didn't know how to thank him enough. Liz stops by to pick up Janelle from Aiden's house. She says her highs and hello to Aiden, and tells Janelle to pack it up because she had to get back home to do Barb's hair for her date with Andy. Andy out arriving early, he bumps right into Dean, who's here to pick up Janelle. Dean explains to Andy that he's in a rush picking up Janelle, as he too has a date tonight. Dean explains that he was taking 𝗲𝗍 to the Outback Steakhouse tonight, and Barb explains that's where her and Andy were going also. Barb comes up with the great idea that they should double date as they were both going to the same place. Dean against it at first. Barb and Andy were quick to convince him, and he decided to call 𝗲𝗍 to ask her if it was okay. 𝗲𝗍 not minding the extra company, they met at a restaurant together. The date was a little rocky as everyone felt a little awkward, but the vibes quickly changed as everyone got comfortable, drinks started flowing, and good conversation happened. Liz decides to spend the night with Janelle, but she was so quick to wonder where Tucker was, but Janelle didn't see the excitement. Tucker hanging out in his room minding his own business, Liz sneaks in to surprise him. Tucker worries that Janelle will find them, but Liz assures him everything will be fine, so she sleeps with him in his bed. Early in the morning, Aiden sneaks into the house and crawls right into bed with Janelle, hoping to surprise her when she wakes up. When she finally does wake up, he explains to her that he missed her and he wanted to hang out with her some more. He begins to show off his culinary skills in the kitchen, which intrigues Janelle very much. Janelle wondering what happened to Liz, she finds her in Tucker's room. They explain nothing happened as they only cuddled in bed together. Janelle disappointed with Liz. Liz explains to Janelle how she's overreacting and this literally has nothing to do with her. Janelle explains how she's uncomfortable with Liz being with Tucker and how it gives her the ick. Janelle also explains how Tucker needs to go get his own life and stop friend stealing and moping around the house all day. Before Janelle could say anything else, Tucker notices Aiden walk into the room and begins to flip out. He explains to Janelle how he's a criminal and a drug dealer and he should not be in the house. He threatens to tell Dean. After everyone has time to cool off and get dressed, they all come to a compromise. Janelle doesn't talk about Tucker and Liz's relationship at all, good or negative, and Tucker says nothing about Aiden being in the house to Dean. Previously on Redwood, Janelle prepares to throw a bonfire to announce the scholarship she received from Brightchester Oasis. With everyone minding their own business, Tucker and Janelle continue to irritate each other. With unexpected guests showing up, tension begins to rise as Dean notices Aiden touching his grill. He begins to question the reason for the party and why everyone was even at his house to begin with. Janelle finally reveals the great news, leaving some people happy and others feeling stressed. With the loan being on Dean's mind, he pulls Aiden aside to make sure he wasn't being watched. Aiden explains that he didn't know Dean had business with his dad, but now he does. Dean explains to Aiden he didn't want him around as he didn't want to be bothered with the Hill family as much as he already was, and he expresses to Aiden how he needs to leave Janelle alone. Janelle yells at Dean for being rude to Aiden as she wondered why he had an attitude to begin with. He explains to Janelle how he was a bit upset with her for not mentioning the scholarship sooner. Janelle explains she wanted it to be a surprise and didn't understand his frustration at all. After the bonfire, Janelle hangs out with Aiden at a local diner. He explains how he did nothing wrong and why Dean even came at him the way that he did. Janelle tells Aiden not to take it personal as he hasn't been the same since the fall festival. Aiden explains to Janelle how he needs to be honest about who he is and what he does. He tells her that his job is a lot more complicated and dangerous than he made it out to be. He hurts people. Janelle not even remotely fazed. She tells Aiden that it doesn't bother her and that it's actually kind of hot. Tucker finally builds the courage to ask for a raise and surprisingly gets one. Benny Bear explains the need for a team leader in the craters as it pays really well because of the toxic air. Tucker accepts the offer, getting the attention from Nate, who overheard the conversation. Nate interrupts the conversation, explaining how he would miss Tucker as he went to his new location, leaving him. Benny Bear invites Nate to join Tucker, as a Nate-free lot is the best lot. Nate explains his frustration with Tucker, as he thought he wasn't keeping his end of the deal. Tucker explains that he had to choose his family's best interest, and he didn't mean anything by it. The next day at the craters, Tucker keeps his promise to Nate and lets him slack off for a little bit. Nate reminds Tucker of his new leadership role and the power that it held. On lunch break, Tucker calls Liz and asks how she felt about meeting Katie, as Caden's birthday was tomorrow. She declines, stating that the relationship is too new to get into anything serious like that. At the birthday party, Tucker scrambles to make sure everything goes to plan. With everyone starting to show up, he hopes Liz comes around and changes her mind. Caden ages up into a toddler. Nate meets Janelle and tries to bum her vape off of her, and the party begins to decline as Tucker was very, very exhausted. Back at the house, Tucker and Liz gets into an argument about how distant she was at the party and how it really, really hurt Tucker. Nate hears Tucker and Liz arguing and decides to go in and calm Tucker down. Liz leaving to give Tucker his space for the rest of the night left Nate thinking Tucker should definitely end things. Previously on Redwood. Liz apologizes to Tucker for her isolation at the birthday party. They both agree to just focus on the relationship, only for Liz to invite him to see Bones play that night. Liz spends the night trying to make Bones jealous, but he doesn't seem to notice or care. Tucker continues to enjoy the night without Liz as she sneaks off to talk to Bones outside. She brings up her feelings for Bones and the relationship, and she ends up giving him her number at the end of the night. Tucker noticing everything, he decides to call Nate and go over to his house to unwind. Tucker explains the situation to Nate, and in return he mentions to him that he told him so. He told him not to stress about it as Liz was always a little suspicious to him. Tucker decides to call things off with Liz after him and Nate's conversation. He explains to her he saw her with Bones during their date, and he saw her give away her phone number. She denies it, explaining that she was only being a fan to Bones. He decides to end things right then and there. Later that night, Tucker apologizing to Dean for not returning home. He sees Nate completely naked. Nate not as taken back by shock like Tucker. He notices something about Tucker. Tucker checking him out. Nate feeling as if he failed Tucker with Liz. He asks of Tucker's sexual orientation, just to find out Tucker is actually bisexual. Tucker not yet ready to truly be himself, he tells Nate he doesn't want to talk about it anymore, just for Nate to taunt Tucker until he does. Eventually he caves in and admits to Nate that he is too nervous to explore that lifestyle. Nate reassuring Tucker all will be well, he arranges for the boys to visit a gay bar that night. Tucker of course disagrees and explains that he isn't ready, by which Nate replies, "You never will be ready, but it's time that you try anyway." Dean still sitting on the loan money that he got from Jakob. He tells Janelle to go find a dress and with no budget, but only if Apani will accompany her. Janelle not as thrilled as she knows Dean has arranged for Apani to have the talk with her. Later that night, the boys meet up at Bender's bar. Nate offers words of wisdom to Tucker, who is slowly freaking out and regretting this whole thing. Inside the bar, Tucker feels out of place and begins to let the nerves take over him. Nate agrees to be his wingman for the night, only to realize Tucker only feels attracted to him. The bar begins to get busier and Tucker finally loosens up and begins to talk to a guy out on the dance floor. He buys him a drink and they begin to conversate. But as the night goes on, they both realize they have nothing in common and are not compatible at all, leaving Tucker to feel hopeless. Previously on Redwood. Dean asks Apani to accompany Janelle in finding a dress for the scholarship dinner, and of course, making sure she has the talk with her. They arrive at the outlet mall and Liz ends up meeting up with them. The girls and Apani begin to shop for a little bit until Janelle was ready to try on her clothes. As Apani was sizing Janelle overhears Liz FaceTiming Bones. Liz explains the breakup between her and Tucker and how he didn't like that she gave Bones her new number. Janelle didn't seem too concerned as she didn't want this to make things weird at the house. Janelle and Apani settled on a dress and Apani begins questioning Janelle about her sexual history. Apani begins to explain to Janelle the importance of contraceptives, informing her on STDs and birth control. Even though Janelle was taken back by this, she informed Apani that all was well and she had the situation completely handled. At that very moment, Janelle thought things were over until Liz mentions Janelle and Aiden's relationship to Apani. This stirred things up with Apani as she explains to Janelle how interfering with the Hills was a very bad idea, but Janelle didn't want to hear any more of it. Nate spends the day with his dad, which consisted of his father training him for fencing and getting him back out there to represent the Dakota name. The next day, Janelle meets up with Aiden for a hunt. Janelle being there really did concern those involved as they didn't know if she could be trusted or not. Janelle explains how she's not a snitch and that she was actually really looking forward to this. With the green light to move forward, it took multiple tries to pry the door open, but nonetheless, they got in. Inside the shop, Aiden told Janelle to snoop around and find something that could be of value, which then she got lucky, and she did. Aiden was very happy and rewarded her nicely. Aiden explains to the man how his payments were late and that they came to pick up what was owed. The man explains how he has nothing left as he spent all his money on his daughter's hearing aid. Aiden showed no remorse to the man's story as he was here to only collect. Janelle overheard the conversation. She interrupts to share her opinion on the matter. She explains to Aiden how what he was doing was dead ass wrong and how he should feel ashamed of himself. He tells Janelle to be quiet and to let him finish his job. Aiden moves forward into taking the girl's hearing aid as Janelle moves forward into beating him with her bag. She couldn't believe he actually went through with it. He explains to Janelle how he didn't have a choice and how she already knew what this was. But Janelle didn't know that kids weren't exempt either. She gives Aiden an ultimatum to give the girl back her hearing aids or she was done. But he couldn't, which only made Janelle mad and end things with Aiden. Back at the house, Janelle takes her frustration out on Tucker, which makes him leave the house to get away from her. He goes over to Katie's house and for some reason he kisses her. Aaron watching the entire thing, he punches Tucker in the face. Tucker fights back and surprisingly wins the fight. He tells Aaron to leave his family alone. Katie, in disbelief, she tries to talk to Tucker about their relationship and what was going to happen next. Tucker, forgetting he had an appointment to view an apartment, he couldn't talk to her yet, but he promised to. Tucker visits the apartment complex and meets Kareem Snow. Mesmerized by Kareem, Tucker accepts the apartment, now torn between the life he could have with Katie and the life that awaits him on the other side. Previously on Redwood. Dean visits his parents' house to repay them back for the $10,000 that he borrowed from them now that he had Jacob's loan. He explains to his parents that things are better now and that Janelle and Redwood are in a better place. After helping out with the farm animals, Dean stops by 𝗲𝗲𝗿𝗲 to look for a car for Janelle. Eager to buy it without a payment plan, Dean settles for an older model. Tucker settles into his new home and immediately invites Nate over for a quick housewarming. Nate, genuinely happy for Tucker, he wastes no time popping open a bottle to celebrate. The boys begin to unwind and the liquor begins to take hold, and Tucker begins to urge Nate to finally open up about himself, as Tucker really did see Nate as his best friend. Nate, completely intoxicated, he agrees to open up to Tucker. Nate mentions to Tucker how he suffered a great tragedy that negatively impacted Nate's life beyond measure. Now he still struggles with substance issues. Tucker, baffled that Nate still used drugs, he couldn't offer Nate any solace, causing Nate to leave discreetly. Tucker, finally realizing he's alone, now that he moved out of Dean's house, he plans a housewarming party. Katie, being one of the few invited, she wastes no time trying to move Tucker to the side to talk. Katie explains to Tucker how him moving forward with getting the apartment wasn't smart, as they still haven't figured out their relationship. She also mentions to Tucker how getting rid of Aaron really messed things up, as Kaden wasn't used to a single parent household. Tucker not being able to get a word in, he walks away from the conversation. Previously on Redwood. Bones decides to finally visit his mother on the reservation just to find out she lived in complete filth. He begins to question how the house got to this point, only to notice his mother was not answering to just him. With the stress of his mother on his mind, Bones finally agreed to have a talk with Liz about the state of their relationship. He mentions to Liz how it wouldn't be the right time to start the relationship again, but being friends could be pretty cool too, as Bones was really just trying to move on with his life in the city. Liz wasn't happy with that answer. Later that day, Bones invites Liz back over to talk a little bit more, seeing how she was kind of upset earlier, but not much talking actually happened. Dean works a shift at 𝗲𝗲𝗿𝗲's and finally makes up his mind to buy Janelle a vintage car that she would love. Liz and Janelle meet up for some girl time at the bowling alley. Liz mentions to Janelle how she was frustrated that Bones didn't want a relationship now that his mother was causing issues for him. Janelle's slightly annoyed by Liz's remarks. She questions her, only to get ignored by Liz. Janelle decides to cut the girl time short. Back home, Dean prepares his surprise for Janelle with cloud gazing, talks over the bonfire, and of course, laughs. He surprises her with the car, and as surprised Janelle was, it was actually the perfect gift. Previously on Redwood. Janelle urges Bones to ask for help regarding his mother. He agrees, feeling appreciative of Janelle's concern. He talks with Dean, who agrees to get the word out to the chapter house. With Janelle going off to college soon, he asked Bones if he knew anybody looking for a job. Bones was eager to mention Jamel for the job. We finally meet the Harringtons where the dinner will be held. Things get a little awkward when the topic of diversity comes up, leaving Janelle to feel unimpressed. With Janelle feeling overwhelmed and Dean shutting down, it was only fair for them to suppress it somehow. The dinner didn't end too horrible, but it was pretty obvious that the families shared different views. Tucker works a day at the Craters with ignoring Nate at the top of his list. He gets some news that Nate's probation will actually be ending soon, and Nate will be leaving. After work, Tucker stops by Katie's place to pick up Kaden. With Katie and Tucker still in a confusing spot about their relationship, Tucker surprises all of us with asking Katie to hook up. Later that night, Dean brings Janelle by to see Tucker's new spot. With tension still rising, Tucker makes amends with Janelle, and they decide to squash the petty beef that they had. The next morning, Tucker meets up with his mom on the res, so she can have some one-on-one time with Kaden. But it was short-lived, as she couldn't stay long due to her being needed at the chapter house. That night, Tucker invites Janelle back over to watch Kaden while he stepped out for the night. He visits Bender's alone and begins to actually mingle. He meets a guy and things surprisingly goes well. Tucker, feeling confident, he let loose and really comes out of his shell. Overall, Tucker had a really great night. Previously on Redwood. Tucker prepares for a morning by the pool until Nate's mom shows up at his doorstep. She explains to Tucker how she might be a little concerned with Nate and that Tucker should probably give him a call. Surprised by this, Tucker actually invites Nate over to hang out with them. Nate mentions to Tucker how his reaction to his drug use really hurt his feelings, as friends really shouldn't act that way. Tucker apologizes, stating that he didn't really know how to react, but Nate had to promise that he was done. Nate agrees. Later that day, Nate mentions a party he wanted Tucker to attend with him. Katie comes by to pick up Kaden, and Tucker takes the opportunity to talk to Katie. He mentions to her how he wasn't ready to be in a relationship, and he was trying to find himself. Katie, annoyed and a little upset by this, she storms off, leaving Tucker confident in his decision. Tucker, Nate, and Janelle arrive at Weston's beach party. Paris so happens to be there with Kenya, Nate's ex. Paris, surprised to see Janelle there, he was determined to have her not kill his vibe. Weston bumps into Janelle, questioning how she even knew about the party. Janelle, feeling a little cornered by Weston, she scurries off towards Nate to get away from him. Nate expresses to Janelle how this party felt like a bus, and how Tucker was having too much fun to even notice if him and Janelle shared a little joint. Eventually, Tucker actually catches Janelle and Nate sharing a joint together, which really upsets him. The boys begin to argue, and Weston chimes in and explains how Nate can't even be trusted, causing Tucker to leave the party. Janelle, overhearing the argument, she steps in to help Nate against Weston. Weston, noticing Janelle's input, he makes a nasty, snarky comment about her. Provoked by this, Nate punches Weston in the face that turns into a full-blown brawl. Everyone begins to circle the boys until Weston beats Nate to the ground, calling him an addict. Weston then kicks Janelle and Nate out of his party. Janelle, annoyed by this entire thing, she begins to walk to her car. Nate accompanies her. On the walk to the car, Nate expresses concern about losing Tucker as a friend and how he broke his promise to Tucker. He goes to explain his history with substances and how he wasn't supposed to be doing them at the party. Janelle, shook by this, she explains how small their worlds really were. After yet another blunt, Janelle begins to notice flashing lights near her car, only to find out that her car was actually being towed. Janelle, in complete disbelief, she urges the man to drop her car. Nate joins Janelle in heckling the tow truck driver until Janelle hops in the car, refusing to leave the vehicle. Nate still prying the man, an altercation begins between Nate and the tow truck driver. Nate too high to win a fight, the tow truck driver calls the police to de-escalate the situation. With Nate and Janelle not backing down, another fight breaks out. Surprisingly, Nate scores a win with Janelle by his side. After being detained by the officer, Nate expresses to Janelle how he was actually kind of scared to go to jail because he was holding much more than marijuana. Janelle, appalled by this, she questions if Nate actually might have some kind of addiction. Now at Tartosa jail, Nate urges the cop to allow him to call his dad to get him out, as Nate's privilege was starting to show. Janelle, now flustered that her car was reported stolen, she still claims innocent as she has no idea what they're talking about. Dean and Ulysses arrive at the station. Dean panics, asking about Janelle, as Ulysses keeps his calm. Dean, startled by Ulysses' calm demeanor, he learns that Nate was actually arrested for not only fighting, but possession of cocaine. Dean questions Nate's drug use as Ulysses questions Janelle driving a stolen vehicle. Dean expresses how that makes absolutely no sense as he just paid for the car. Ulysses offers to help Dean in this matter, but all Dean could think about was how he got cheated by 𝗲𝗲𝗍. Previously on Redwood. Dean visits 𝗲𝗲𝗍 at the dealership only to tase him right on the spot. Failing to actually question him, Dean calls Ulysses for mediation. After Ulysses wakes up 𝗲𝗲𝗍, Dean questions Andy about the current state of Janelle's car and explains how she was arrested for this. Andy, completely oblivious to this, he explains to Dean how he only sells the cars. With Dean growing impatient, he attacks Andy, wanting more answers. Andy finally tells Dean that he gets the cars from a junkyard in Moonwood. Dean doesn't hesitate to make his way there. Dean and Ulysses arrive at the junkyard and Dean immediately surveillances the area. Ulysses explains to Dean how they should probably just go and talk to the people rather than hide and look suspicious. Dean brings Ulysses to reality and tells him that things don't work like that around here. As Dean continues to give Ulysses a reality check, they are spotted by the junkyard dogs. With the dogs drawing attention to Dean and Ulysses, Ulysses was quick to take charge. He explains the situation to the man only to be ignored and threatened to leave the property. Dean takes things into his own hands. Liz visits Bones to offer her support for the chapter house meeting. Bones, feeling vulnerable, he accepts Liz's advances, appreciating her for being there for him. Things begin to get a little steamy, and they actually hook up. The next morning, they prepare to go to the chapter house meeting with Melody, Bones' mom. The meeting consisted of the members discussing how they would tackle the hoarding issue and all the safety precautions needed to take place. Bones couldn't help but just space out. After the meeting, Bones and Melody shared their appreciation and Bones meets Kaya, a younger member of the chapter house. She explains that she was eager to help, which was now getting the attention of Liz. With Bones feeling overwhelmed about the whole meeting and his mom wandering off, he tells Liz she's free to leave as everything was now handled. Aiden visits the junkyard after hearing about the incident. The men explain to Aiden how they were jumped by some big guy and didn't recognize who he was. Aiden, trying his best to keep his cool, Jakob enters the conversation, expressing his disappointment with the entire group. He pulls Aiden to the side and tells him to deal with the situation and to find a new crew. Aiden apologizes. Later that night, Aiden pulls up at Janelle's place unannounced, demanding to talk to her. They take a quick walk and Aiden expresses how he's actually in love with Janelle. Janelle, not fazed by this, she ignores him. He explains to Janelle how she is the only good thing in his life and how he begs her to allow him to love her. He announces how he has a surprise for her and he just wants to meet her for a date. Janelle walks away, pondering the invitation. Previously on Redwood. The chapter house visits Melody in hopes of cleaning out her home. With everyone suited up, they were ready to tackle the hoarding issue. Surprisingly, Liz tags along and helps out as well, but things fall short when Liz mentions the state of their relationship again. Bones, frustrated with everything that's going on, he tells Liz to just leave because it wasn't an appropriate time to talk about it. Once the cleaning day came to an end, Bones confesses that he's ready to wind down, and 𝗂𝗲 invites him out to a local bar. Bones, finally feeling relieved, he opens up, and him and 𝗂𝗲 actually enjoy the night together with some drinks and karaoke. With Bones feeling the liquor in his system and obviously the newfound confidence around 𝗂𝗲, he flirts with her, enough to make her blush. Janelle and Bones meet up at Redwood to train 𝗲𝗲. Not much training actually got done when the subject of Aiden came up. She actually mentioned to them how he asked to meet up with her that night. Bones, totally against this, he told her not to meet up with him, as things seemed a little suspicious. Janelle mentions that she plans to break things off with him anyway, as Aiden is becoming too clingy. Jamel suggests Janelle might be aromantic, as most of the signs are leading that way. Later that day, Janelle meets up with Aiden at the warehouse. He came dressed up very nicely in hopes of impressing Janelle. Janelle mentions to Aiden how she needed to talk, but Aiden moves on with the date as planned, ignoring her. After all the surprises have been revealed, Janelle tells Aiden she's not interested, only ticking him off. He explains the date took a couple of days and that any woman would have appreciated this, but why couldn't she? Janelle expressing to Aiden how she didn't forgive him for what he did, she leaves him with a broken heart. Upset and clearly flustered, Aiden meets up with his dad later that night and asks for more work. Jakob, confused, he doesn't pass up this opportunity and tells Aiden to visit Redwood. With Liz at Kennedy's place now that Barbara has moved to Florida, Liz realizes her plan to keep Bones was now in motion. Liz confides in Kennedy, telling her how she corrupted all of the condoms that Bones used. Kennedy, completely shook by this confession, she freaks out, only making Liz question what she has done. After deep consideration, Liz finally accepts herself being pregnant and fantasizes about her and Bones' new future. Tish prepares the home for Paris' acceptance party to Brightchester Oasis, but fails to keep Cedric on board as he only rebels against her words. We soon later find out Cedric has been keeping a little secret of his own. With the stress aiming for perfection tumbling down, Cedric finally told Tish he wanted a divorce, leaving Tish stunned for a second, but nonetheless, the party was still happening. The frat boys showed up, and even Kenya, who Paris was really excited to see the most. Onlookers who weren't invited to the party couldn't say much but just stare. Janelle still holding a grudge against Dean, she continues to ignore him for the whole stolen car jail incident. Janelle quick to get away from Dean. She visits Bones and Jamal to catch a ride to Redwood for Jamal's first official day. She fills them in on how the date went with Aiden, which quickly concerned them, but Janelle assured them that there was no problem. Like, chill. With both the boys on the clock actually working and surprisingly getting the job done, Janelle found it quite peaceful and fulfilling, doing absolutely nothing. With the day winding down, of course creatures come out to play. Aiden and his new crew show up and they make plans to burn down Redwood. Not even seconds upon break-in, Bones spots the boys and tells them to leave. Of course they refuse and they begin to toy with Bones until Dirt was ordered by Aiden to attack Bones. Jamel stumbling in without a clue as to what's even happening, he also gets attacked, leading into a brawl in the store. With both boys down, the crew begins their attempt at burning down Redwood until the store proved to be fireproof, causing rage, confusion, and bad hygiene. After beating Bones relentlessly, the boys scatter away, leaving Bones and Jamel's unconscious on the ground, and Janelle still fast asleep, completely unaware as to what just happened. Jakob checks on Aiden only to find out that the job did not get done, and Aiden only made things worse attacking Bones. Jakob is beginning to doubt Aiden's capability of doing absolutely anything. Everyone gathers at the hospital after hearing about what went down at Redwood. Bones suffered from head injuries, a broken arm, and unfortunately fell into a coma, while Jamel suffered from a broken arm and a knot on his head, making it hard for him to remember who actually did this. While Dean feeling devastated about everything that went down, he tries to encourage everyone to stay calm while looking for answers also. Receiving the news that Bones was now in a coma, Liz feared the worst for Bones and their child, while 𝗲𝗲 tried his best to even understand what was happening. With the chapter house quick to act, they wasted no time helping Liz and getting the word out that Redwood was recently hit. With the chapter house stirring up panic and the word spreading, Aiden hears about the state of the boys and boldly visits the hospital, offering his pre-condolences. He spots 𝗲𝗃 and quickly tries to apologize for what happened on the date and how he overreacted and how he just really wants to help with what was going on. 𝗲𝗃 still not seeing past Aiden's cruel words. She rejects his apology unless he found out who actually did this to Redwood and Bones. Aiden wasted no time performing his act of concern and a chance to win 𝗲𝗃 back. Liz pulls 𝗲𝗃 away to finally reveal her pregnancy, leaving 𝗲𝗃 completely baffled and feeling all types of ways. With Bones' medical issues now at the top of Liz's list, 𝗲𝗃 suggests a trip to the clinic to weigh out Liz's options. Nate experiences his first week in rehab, finding it hard to follow directions and think positive. Due to his time here before, he finds it quite traumatizing to have to go through this all over again, seeing that this facility was a little strange to begin with. Nate's parents stop by for a visit, inviting Weston along with them, as more support means faster recovery. With Nate trying to participate somewhat, things begin to feel a little off with Constance, but Weston assures her that everything will be fine. Barb flies into town without Andy to be by Bones' side in this tough time. Frustrated with Bones' upbringing, Barb picks a fight with Melanie, leaving Bones to just absorb everything from the great beyond. Barb suggests Bones needs a change of location, as moving to Florida could be his best bet, where she can definitely ensure his safety. With Bones almost being beat to death, Liz finally confesses to Barb that she tampered with the condoms, causing pregnancy. Barb, literally stunned but supportive, she of course offers help to Liz as much as she can in Florida. 𝗂𝗃 lurking in the back, he overheard the girls' conversation, now knowing the location of Andy. With everyone eventually leaving and going home, Liz and 𝗲𝗃 remain. With Liz losing hope, 𝗲𝗃 explains how thinking negative gets you absolutely nowhere. An argument begins to break out between Liz and 𝗲𝗃 about Liz moving too fast, because what are you doing? She then reveals her pregnancy to 𝗲𝗃, stating that she was in a confusing spot. 𝗲𝗃 found nothing confusing about the spot she was in because it was perfectly logical on what Liz needed to do. Liz disagreed. Back at the hills, 𝗂𝗃 confronts Aiden on the state of Bones and expresses his concern regarding Bones' face and overall injuries, but 𝗂𝗃 doesn't understand why Aiden didn't stop beating Bones up, but suggests that Aiden might have some serious issues. With Aiden quitting on 𝗂𝗃 and 𝗂𝗃 refusing to let Aiden go, a fight breaks out between them, causing Aiden to lose to his dad yet again. Feeling lost and hopeless, Aiden can only think of 𝗲𝗃 in moments like these where her laugh can cure his darkest moments. He decides to call her and tell her he knows exactly who broke into Redwood, piquing her interest. 𝗲𝗏 and Dean end up meeting up, with 𝗲𝗏 having some news to share with Dean regarding their relationship and of course her career. She explains to him that she was offered a position in Brindleton and how things weren't going to work for them anymore. Dean apologizes that he wasn't really 100% into the relationship, but maybe if he tried harder, she could probably stay. But unfortunately, that wasn't the case. 𝗲𝗃 tells Dean that Aiden has information about what happened at Redwood, causing Dean to feed into what they actually could know. Dean meets up with the Hills, finding himself in the center of manipulation as the Hills urge Dean to handle it himself.